You're listening to the Wilmac Wire, the podcast that's designed to educate you on what's happening in the realm of customer experience and data management technology, specifically coming from the perspective of a growing organization. Thank you for tuning in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Wilmac Wire. My name is Emily Miller, and this week we are sharing the second half of my interview with Bob Duffy, President and CEO of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. Last week I had the privilege of interviewing Bob, and we aired the first half of the interview in episode 10. So if you haven't listened to that yet, I suggest exiting out wherever you're listening to your podcasts and scroll down a little bit and click on episode 10 of the Wilmac Wire. So yes, this week is the second half of that interview, and Bob and I just had a lengthier conversation that was too good to cut down, so we decided to release it in two parts. So to give you some context from last week's episode, Bob and I were in the middle of our discussion about the importance of caring and believing in what you're doing as an organization and how crucial that is to being a successful organization. So we talked a little bit about how Wilmac and the Chamber do that by instilling that care and that belief and collective unity within our organizations to achieve success. So this week we talk more about how the Chamber is specifically uplifting technology and other innovative companies in the region with their support and services. And then at the end of this episode, Bob and I share a quick fun story about our college basketball days. So stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoy the second half of our interview with Bob Duffy, and thank you for tuning in. That's great, and I think you touched on a lot of things there, but I think what's most obvious to me is how much you care and how that just kind of spreads across the board. I've had the pleasure of working with so many of your team members, and you just very obviously care, and that's very greatly appreciated.
And I appreciate your comment. If you don't care about what you do, you don't care, whether you're a teacher, you care about your kids in your class, in any organization, you have to care about the people inside and who you serve. If you don't care, you belong in a different profession.
Yeah.
And there are too many people sometimes professions that don't care.
Yeah.
And if you are here to collect a paycheck, it's not worth it. I know a lot of people who make a lot of money who are very, very unhappy with what they do. And a lot of people who don't make a lot of money who are very happy with what they do. And that's the most important thing, is because if you are doing what you love and you feel good about what you're doing, that's what matters the most. I could not imagine going to work every day and hating it. And there are people that literally hate to leave the house every day to go to work. It's too bad, because it's, I think that's sometimes the job itself might not be exciting, but I do think that's where leadership at all levels comes in, because you want people to feel valued.
Yeah.
When I was at City Hall, I used to always say I could take any job in City Hall. We had like 3,000 employees, and we had three priorities. We had education, economic development, and public safety. There were three things that were most important in the city. And it has many different tentacles out of those three. But I said I could take every single position in city government and somehow could point, there's a line that'll hit one of those three priorities.
Right.
So what you do matters. And I would come in the morning, and we had a group of like 5 women, most were immigrants, who cleaned City Hall in the evening at night. That would come in, and the place would be gleaming. And we would host a dinner twice a year for them. We have a little dinner and bring in food and thank them for what they did. But here are people that they might think they had a menial job. I would say, what? Everybody that walks in this building feels proud. You walk in, they would shine things. I just love what they did. But I could take any job and point to it. And here, and what we have in this floor is the same thing. Everybody has great value. We only have 41 employees, but everyone matters, and everybody has a role to play.
Yeah.
Some are more forward or outward facing, some are inside. But I think that's they matter. If people feel that what they do matters and it's important and they're valued, then I think they're going to appreciate their job and coming to work. I also would say too that as a leader, I don't want to lose people, but when people have an opportunity that's better, that's higher paying. I also think if you have the kind of culture where people do move a different position, they're still friends, like family. You have like allies out there. It's like a fraternity. And I've worked with people for many years, different careers, that if they call me today at 5 o'clock in the morning, something, I'm on it. And if I called them, the same thing would happen. Not everybody leaves happy, but we've had 2 young teammates. One left a few years ago, and one will be leaving in a few months. they've been great contributors here,
Mm-hmm.
but they've had offers that we can't match, and I think it's a great thing for them to take. And so, I mean, one thing we should always do is give people the freedom to kind of grow and meet people, and then when those opportunities come, go
Yeah.
for it. I grew up in an era where I left college I was playing basketball for school in New Hampshire to come back. I took the police test as a lark in the summer. I was working for city recreation. My mother wanted me to go back to school. My father wanted me to stay and take a job. I stayed. I have 1 year of eligibility left. Nobody would ever ask me to play for me longer. But I remember staying here and taking that job and never having regrets because I just making that decision and staying. I've always loved what I've done. I do. Always loved coming to work. I can't think of a time in my career where I would just leave the house and shoulders down. Just I'm ready to rock and roll even today every day, and it's it's fun. And I think that people that work here, I love what they do. I love how they do their job, and I think that's something that I'm probably most proud of.
Yeah, that's incredible. And
Get a long answer to a question. I'm
no,
sorry.
good answers though. And I see just a lot of crossover between when Steve acquired the company, our Wilmac's president acquired the company back in 2022, and how you guys have been able to have multiple conversations since then, and just that same thought process of like, we have to build our people up to build a great company. So I think that's so important, and I completely agree with what you're saying. So just a few more questions for you. So what does it mean to you to have a technology company like Wilmac focus its growth in the Rochester region?
First of all, we are a technology area, and the Tech Hub designation, which Senator Schumer and Joe Morelli announced last week, is a designation that we're very proud of as Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse. But look at the history here. Go back to, again, George Eastman and Kodak, Xerox. If you look at history, I guess Xerox, Bausch & Lomb, and Kodak were the big three back then, but we have had such a long history of innovation and technology. You have RIT, U of R, you have a total of 19 colleges, universities. Most of the colleges are now universities. They've kind of transitioned the last couple of years. But every year you have incredible men and women coming out, present company included, of local colleges and universities, who stay here, who many have a technology background or a background that really supports technology. And I've gone to more events here. I remember going to an undergrad at RIT, and I can't think of it. It's Imagine RIT was a program the former president Bill Dessler put in. I remember the first year I went, I came out like, man, these kids are like scary smart. You think of the brain power that we're putting out. So I think this hub, this designation that we have right now, is going to be a game changer. It's not the money. I think the money is secondary. It's stating that Rochester, it means something in the world of technology. Not to digress, but there's a book called Jumpstarting America, written by two MIT professors. Actually, Jonathan Gruber is one. Met him. He's been in Rochester. They studied 102 regions across the country just a few years ago, looking for the next generation of technology hubs. So you look at Boston, Austin, Silicon Valley. What's the next level across the country? Out of 102 regions, guess who ranked number one? Rochester.
Really?
And it kind of, people are like, what? I can't believe it. It reinforces what we have here. So I think Wilmac is really a part of this ecosystem here that is growing, that you are offering services, you are really doing things to support other companies. I want to learn more about how we can access some of those services of the chamber. Because I know what you do, and I just want to figure out how can we do it, because we do business with chamber members. So that's what we do. We don't do business outside. We RFP with our members, but I do think you're in a perfect position right now, and I think that position is even getting better. We have an effort here at the chamber, funded through Rock 2025, to try to get students in local colleges to get used to Rochester. I grew up here. I grew up, the city very well, Driving Park. I grew up in the 10th Ward, the northwest part of the city. So I've been here my whole life. I'm not going to retire and go to Florida. I don't mind the snow and the cold. I'm going to be here. I love this area. I love the Finger Lakes. But getting people to stay here, because sometimes I have two daughters. One stayed here after college. One went to Cleveland in college, then Chicago, and got her back. But if we can't get these students to stay in the first time, maybe we get them the second round. So it's a great place to come and raise a family. It's great. It's more affordable than some of the big metro areas. Transportation issues. There's a lot of amenities here that are great. I think COVID reinforced that.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do here
Right.
that is going to be less expensive. So trying to get those students to stay here will only grow this whole ecosystem. But I see technology just exploding. We get to visit a lot of companies here, and I'm blown away by what we have. We have the Hubble telescope has parts and components here. I think I'm not sure if it's Elon Musk rockets or other rockets or NASA. There are component parts here. L3 Harris is known throughout the world for communications equipment.
Right.
And then you have all the medical technologies kind of coming out of the UVR and some of these startups from the UVR and RIT. You have next door over in the Sibley building.
Right.
And I was at the Golisano Institute yesterday. I'm a big fan of Tom Golisano. I've known Tom Golisano since the 90s. Met him we're in a program together called Rochester Fights Back. It was an anti-drug coalition way back then. And I've always liked, respected, admired him for what he's done. Nobody gave him anything. He built his empire himself in his basement with his mother. But to this day, he is nurturing this next generation of young business leaders through the Institute, through the programs he's doing.
Yep.
And that ecosystem is just going to grow and flourish. So I would say Wilmac is in a great place because you will keep growing and evolving with what you do. But I couldn't think of a better place where you would be than Rochester right now. And I think it's part of, we should have that sense of pride. And I love our sister cities, Buffalo and Syracuse. But I think we all have something special to offer here. But it's a very special place. It just is. And I go back to Outside Technology, the home of Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. I've always said, there's a spirit in this community that it permeates a lot. It really is. And there's just something here. There's a vibe. And I just was in the Capitol recently and saw Susan B. and the suffragettes. And I have two daughters, so what she stood for. And I know right where she voted for the first time on West Main Street. There's just a history of I think, social justice, of innovation, of technology. And we've gone through some hard times, but I'm sensing right now this transformation is taking place. Everybody always complains about things. And it's always the good old days. Well, the good old days are here and are getting better. And everybody talks about that, but I think right now you're seeing this confluence of so much going on that I think it's a great time to be in business. Great time for us to be in the chamber and be in our role, and it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, and it's just exciting to work with many of the local organizations, like you talked about, Golisano Institute, starting that partnership, RIT, U of R, all of the local colleges. We're big on recruiting from Rochester. That's why we invested in building a new office here. So couldn't agree more. All right, Bob, last question for you. Where can people find you, and where can they find more about the chamber?
Find me here at the chamber. We're at 250 Clinton Square. Go on our website. We all have our emails. As I mentioned, I think my phone has been overused a lot, but we're accessible. I would say I give cards out a lot. I can think of very few. Most of the abuses are from short-tail relatives, I think, over time wanting something. But I think other than that, people are great. Reach out anytime. The best way is email, I think. If we're in meetings or whatever, my phone is always turned off. I don't like it off. I'm not on my phone during meetings. But reach out. We're at Clinton Square on email. But if people want to know more about the chamber, you can check us out. We don't recruit. I've always said before that other chambers, when I first got here, were concerned that we would take members away. And I've often said this chambers that if anyone ever had a member leave their chamber to go to our chamber and just walk away, call. We'll fix that in 30 seconds because the relationships are much more important than money. I think that you want that, and we don't do that. I think we respect the other chambers, and for the most part, I think probably 95% have returned that, and we work very well together. But I would urge people to reach out because one of my taglines here that we use: "We're not your grandfather's chamber. We don't sit around with cigars and ties and suits." And I think we have a lot of young, talented energy here. You've met some already. I think a nice mix. I think we are very flexible. I think we're looking at. To me, we have to look futuristically. It's not what we're doing today. Looking down the road, you always want to be in front of the bus, not run over by it. So you want to look at what's the next thing. AI is flourishing right now. We had a person here come in a little while ago trying to tutor us a little bit how we can apply artificial intelligence for really better serve our folks here. But I get utilizing technology, understanding what we need for the future. I think it's, I think we play a big role in that, and we work with everybody. So if somebody needs something, I mean, go back, uh, not to tell you stories, but I think it was 2 years ago, a neighbor reached out to my wife and said, uh, we're going to a wedding over in the UK, and the bride's mother cannot get the passport. Everybody's going over. And so it's like they're leaving on Thursday. This is a Monday night. And so I get home. I'm like, I don't know if I can even do it. I go to help. So Tuesday, I reached out to two people, um, Senator Schumer and Congressman Morelli, on Tuesday. And I'm like, here's the information. I didn't know this person. They were connected to our next door neighbor, who I didn't know our neighbors that well. And so that was on a Tuesday. I'm on a commission that meets in Buffalo. On a Wednesday, I'm in a meeting in Buffalo, and the neighbor calls me and says, "You're not gonna believe this, but she's on her way to Buffalo right now to get her passport and fly out tomorrow." And they were like, "We can't think of it." I said, "Don't thank me. Thank Chuck Schumer and Joe Morelli." And they both worked on this, but it was an odd request. But I go back to, it's not what we did; it's the relationships that matter. And be able to call people that can make things happen. If we were disrespectful, if we were taking credit for things, if we were, not good partners or collaborators, I don't think they'll even take our call. And so it's just, I mean, one of the great lessons I've mentioned before is just the relationships and nurturing those. But that's a story. And every time I see them, they would, say, I think, I'm like, oh, thank me, thank Schumer and Morelli, and vote for him. But I mean, but to me, when they do things like that, and I said that, I know both of them very well, and it's one of those, when people at that level can take the time, it's their staff involved to help somebody. It tells you that's what public service is all about. If they were to say no, we're too busy, I think the best part of government is not the big policy issues. It's what they do for Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the ground, and I think that those things matter. And when somebody does that, I think people never forget when somebody does something for them. And I would say probably more on the government end, because they're so used to it not getting done. And I just think it's a great way. And I think our elected officials, by and large, locally, do in the statewide, do a very good job with that in terms of following up. And I think that goes back to our role here is to keep those relationships going. It makes no difference who comes into office. I don't care what party. We will work with everybody. And so I think our role is that as things transition, as people leave office, come into office, get to know them and have a relationship, respect them. And I think that's one of the biggest validators for us to do our work.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate again your partnership with Wilmac Technologies. I can't speak highly enough of your chamber team. So thanks for joining us on the podcast today and sharing more about what you guys do at the chamber and how Wilmac fits in, and just more about yourself personally.
I have a question.
Yeah. What's up?
I want to hear your best basketball story at Roberts Blessing.
My best basketball story. Okay, yeah, I've got one for you. So I played at Roberts from 2016 to 2020, and my first collegiate game was whatchamacallit. We played a D1 school. It was can't remember what the name of it was called, but we went to Notre Dame and we played Notre Dame. That was my first collegiate basketball game.
At Notre Dame?
At Notre Dame.
Well,
so I was 18. I was getting ushered in. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then we just got smacked by 80. But it was the coolest experience ever.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I drove through campus. We drove to Chicago when my daughter was getting married. We had a bridal party out there. So my wife and my youngest daughter drove from here to Chicago. We went to South Bend and drove to the campus.
Yeah.
And just always revered Notre Dame growing up. I grew up with my Irish Catholic family. So I always go through and see it. Never got out of the car, but I was like, wow, it was fabulous. That's a great story.
Yeah, I was about to say, I always tell people, didn't know I scored 13 points against Notre Dame. So, yeah.
I'll tell you my story and the great impact I had. It was a Division II, Division III school in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And so I was a junior up there playing. We played in Providence Civic Center against a team. It was going to the Nationals that year, and it was a tournament was somewhere out west. So we lost by 5 or 6 points, and so we went home. And that team went to Nationals. So fast forward, the following fall, I made a decision that I would stay home, and I took the police test over the summer, and I was offered a job to start in November. So I was saying before, think because my mother wanted me to take a job, my father didn't, go back to school, it was back and forth. I just made a decision, I'm going to take a job and stay. So the following year, it was probably March, I get a call from my teammates, and they had just won the regional tournament. They were going to nationals. So
Oh my God.
by virtue of my leaving the team, I helped a great deal because they went off the national tournament the next year. And I've been a basketballer my whole life. I played baseball growing up, and my brothers wanted me to play baseball. I was a pitcher. I love basketball. I just do. Same. To this day. NBA, I don't watch very much. I love Caitlin. I watch the WNBA. She is like, to me, create a craze. She's a great player. But I love March Madness. Like college, I sit there. I could watch those games, and big Syracuse fan, so I hit at least 1 or 2 Syracuse games a year. I met Adrian Autry last year at the PGA. He's a new coach. Met Boeheim like once. I would say probably a great coach. Not the most winning personality, people would say, but Coach Autry, I like. I think that I'm hoping that they can kind of get back on track.
Definitely.
But your story is much better than mine. That's a great.
Thank you.
I never played in Notre Dame.
Hey, for March Madness next year, we run a bracket at Wilmac every year, so you are more than welcome.
Yeah, I jump in there.
We get way too competitive. So.
It's funny. My brother, I have 2 brothers. My oldest brother went to Villanova. He's a fanatical Villanova fan. I know Bill. The whole family, they all go to Villanova.
Yeah, they all love Villanova. McDonald's.
That team. I mean, probably 2 national championships in recent years. They were always great.
Yeah, love watching Villanova for sure. All right. Well,
thank you both. Yeah, thanks guys very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Again, visit the Chamber of Commerce, greaterrochesterchamber.com, and check out the Wilmac Wire next week. All right. Thank you. What a great conversation. Hopefully we can have Bob on again in another year or so we can really see how our partnership between Wilmac and the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce has evolved. So thank you to Bob and the Chamber team for their hospitality and hosting us in their new office space. We moved over from State Street together, and now we're on the other side of the city together, so it's great to still be neighbors. Also, I can't believe this is our 11th Wilmac Wire episode. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. As the marketing director at Wilmac Technologies, where this is partially my job. Thank you so much for listening. And as a shameless plug, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Wilmac Wire where you listen to podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, so that you can be notified whenever a new episode is dropped. Also, we film all of our podcast episodes and post those to YouTube. So if you haven't checked out the Wilmac Technologies YouTube page, please consider doing so as well, because we have a lot of great content over there besides the Wilmac Wire. Thank you again for listening. Make sure to tune in next week, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wilmac Wire. Don't want to miss the next one? Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And while you're at it, head over to LinkedIn and follow the Wilmac Technologies page to stay up to date on everything happening here at Wilmac Technologies. And again, thank you for tuning in.